on a summer night. There's a warmth in the glow of your city light. You're my friend and my home, my work and my pride. You make me feel so alive. My Waterloo, yeah, Waterloo. You lift your head high for the world to see. The beauty of the morning sky, always there for me. You're my friend and my home, my work and my pride. And I'm gonna stay by your side. You're my Waterloo, and you're going to be it. Don't you know? You're the neighbors that come home to. You're my Waterloo, and you know I was gonna need you. My
Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Dead Malls, your one home for the most authentic dead and abandoned mall tours and nothing AI related. In tonight's episode, we are finally back, revisiting and putting a gravestone on one of my favorite dead malls of all time. You might remember it from the Christmas special years back, or the recent High 8 tour, or the many older videos I have on it. I've been here a lot, but tonight, for this Season 7 special, we chronicle the entire story of this mall, its history, told through my several trips over the past few years, all of the extra encounters I've had since, and how the world sort of left it all behind. Welcome back everyone to the Crossroads Mall in Waterloo, Iowa, and its final days before closing forever. Before we do head in, I'd like to shout out our winner who was able to successfully guess the next mall. Very nice job, true Dad Mall legend. If you'd like to have your chance of being shouted out into the next episode, stick around for the next challenge. Anyways, let's see this mall's beautiful retro 70s facade from the outside and through the seasons, then head in, tell the story of Crossroads Mall, and see this beautiful Christmas light-wrapped paradise, still twinkling, though forgotten and left behind by its city. A mall that I myself have come to call home over my years of living in the Cedar Valley. And now, hundreds of visits later, and we head in, bid it one final painful and bittersweet adieu, and say goodbye one last time to Crossroads, a mall that I will never forget, but forever miss. I hope y'all are ready to really see this place. You can count this episode of Dead Malls as the sort of encyclopedia or dictionary to Crossroads Mall, because not only are we going to explore every inch of it and its mall guts, but we're also going to tell its entire story, front to back, with dozens of new historical photos for reference. So you can see just how this mall went from one of the largest and top performing malls in Iowa to a soon-to-be abandoned shell of nothing. Looking back at this main block of footage, which comes from the summer of 2024, I'm reminded ever more of just how far this mall has fallen, and how we really have lost the remaining delicacies in the past few months and years. I mean, the mall itself still looks exactly the same amount of closed stores, which is all of them now, but things like the elevator. I'm reminded of how I used to be able to ride that as its blue lights slowly went out over the years, and now it's completely out of order, awaiting further use and function that will never come to be. You also might remember from my older Crossroads videos how this place used to be filled with dozens of amazing tropical plants all over its several courts, which too, just before I filmed this video in 2024, were sold off and vanished from the atriums, only further adding emptiness to the mall's already sad courts. In my last Crossroads vid from like 3 years ago, there was still stores like Maurice's, Rue 21, Spencer's, Journeys, and Claire's, whom have all closed like I predicted, and even Bath & Body Works, though they were the last ones, couldn't hang on any longer. And you'll see in this footage how the store was closed for heat because the mall's AC system did not work last summer, and it was brutally hot in here. The store, as you'll see later on in tonight's video, would ultimately close just months later. If we're gonna tell the story of Crossroads, we gotta start from the very beginning. And we first gotta start with the city it was constructed in. So ladies and gentlemen, get your popcorn and get comfy, because after we go back in time real quick and see this closing finish line, which was the last name brand to leave the lower level, we're gonna begin its history, going back to the 1950s and the golden age of the industrial powerhouse that was Eastern Iowa's Waterloo, and how one single mall came to change the entire fabric of the city forever. In the late 1950s, Waterloo, Iowa was still an economic powerhouse in the state, producing a growing population of around 60,000 residents in the city alone. The downtown corridor consisted of major department stores and hundreds of other shops, restaurants, and eateries. Before the mall was constructed, pretty much all of Waterloo's retail was located in the downtown core. Pre-mall and LPR Expressway, and downtown was still a thriving and bustling core of commerce. Before Crossroads pulled everything away, brands to populate massive department stores and towering buildings included those like Black's, JCPenney, Sears, Montgomery Ward, Palace Clothiers, and Richfield's, among others. Yes, believe it or not, but back in its day, Waterloo felt like an up-and-coming city, a small bustling metropolis. And by 1960, the population was over 71,000 residents. However, urban redevelopment in almost every form was soon to mug the city, transforming it into a shell of its great past. Long ago, this Diamond Dave's here used to have a full 180-degree view of the parking lot. I'm guessing their sales started to tank after Dillard's kind of plopped their store right in front of them in 1997, kind of killing the view. But this small hallway was, at one time, one of the mall's main entrances, which is why it still has that amazing old ceiling design with the graded fluorescent lights, and the Diamond Dave's neon, which I would pay money for if this place ever closed. And I find it amazing how, despite the renovations, there's still just so many parts of this mall where you can so obviously see the older styles bleeding through in the architecture. I just love it. I love so much about this place. We learned a little bit about Waterloo, and now you have the context to see how urban redevelopment and the freeway and the mall all sort of killed it. I'm not saying the mall was a bad thing, no, for decades it was one of the most amazing places in the city. A colorful indoor city within a city, where you could always find your friends, or the best food in town, or the coolest new shops. So how did Crossroads come to fruition? Well, it all started in 1965 with one out-of-state development company's crazy idea. A brand new mall built at the southern crossroads of Old Highway 218 and 412, nowadays LaPorte and San Martin, was first announced on July 12, 1965, by Crossroads Centers of St. Cloud, Minnesota. The city overall was skeptical, as they had been teased with the idea of a major indoor shopping mall many times by developers in the past. The city would okay the project in December of 1965, which was headed by Crossroads Centers Inc., whom also had constructed malls of the same name in Fort Dodge, Iowa, and St. Cloud, Minnesota. Crossroads Center in Waterloo, Iowa was to be their largest mall to date, with early conceptual renders touting the center as featuring 650,000 square feet of retail space, with possibility of the bump up to 700,000. Initial plans featured Southdale Center-esque garden courts and large open atriums with escalators and planters. 50 colorful shops, along with 2 anchors, Sears and JCPenney, were expected to open with the complex, and these renders surely got hopes up in the city for an exciting and new experience, as the mall was to be the first 2-level super regional shopping center in Iowa. Sorry, Park Fair, you're not really super regional. This long, vacant expanse would have once housed the entry into the mall's once glimmering Dillard's department store, which was part of an addition that took place nearly 30 years ago at this point. And there's a news clip of when it opened, where you can see hundreds of people coming and going from the shiny new store and hugging all of this space, which was all potential future store space. As you can see though, none of it was really built. Nowadays, it's such an eerie, sad, and surreal walk, and every time I come here, I just think of all of those people wrapped around that staircase and filling the compass, when there was life and color. As early as 1966, officials from the Crossroads development firm were working in careful coordination with the city of Waterloo and the Iowa DOT to somewhat coordinate the mall's location with the future Highway 20 freeway expansion. They planned for the new 20 to pass just south of the mall and feature a partial cloverleaf interchange which would connect it to the current Highway 218. Unfortunately for developers, this isn't really what ended up happening, at least not all the way. Groundbreaking and construction officially began in spring of 1968, with the mall planned and promoted to be completed by March of '69. However, construction on the mall portion took longer than expected, and opening was pushed back to the following spring of 1970. Both JCPenney and Sears, still operating their smaller, outdated downtown stores, would be relocating to the new mall, anchoring either end of the structure in massive 2-story big box anchor stores. Construction on Sears was the quickest, with its opening actually planned to get underway by the initial 1969 date. I'm gonna turn down the music here for just a little bit so you guys can hear the mall's natural ambiance, which was this sort of creepy outside wind howling sound. I don't know. It sounded very liminal and kind of creepy, but I wanted you guys to experience it, so I'll mute the music for just a little bit. Sears Auto Center would be the first operating tenant on site, opening their garages for business on February 5th, 1969. It was also in the early months of 1969 that the first detailed plans began to come out, calling for the new Cedar Valley Freeway, the 8.3-mile stretch of motorway that would end up becoming the current-day LPR Expressway, a freeway which would cut right through the heart of downtown in several neighborhoods, with the grand scheme of connecting Waterloo and Cedar Falls, a growing metro area which now had over 125,000 residents. This freeway in concept would greatly hurt Crossroads' traffic source, bypassing travelers around the mall instead of leading them right to it. Waterloo still had a few more years, though, before any of this was to become reality, so Crossroads was safe for a time. Sears Roebuck and Company would be the first major department store to open in the structure, allowing shoppers in on Tuesday, March 25th, 1969. However, they would hold an official grand opening of the store the next day, on Wednesday, March 26th, 1969. Inside, shoppers were wowed with its flurry of colorful, modern, shiny, and new departments, all open for business. Included amongst the 124,000 square feet of retail space lie several different carpeted shopping areas, dozens of chandeliers, which were all unique to their departments, a catalog order center, and even a 95-seat coffee shop. Sears touted this store, in Waterloo, Iowa of all places, as being one of their largest, most modern, and innovative stores to date, and only time could tell how amazing the rest of the new Crossroads would be. As the days went on, its framework and exterior came to a close, and soon construction of the inside of the giant structure was underway, with photos from the time showing the construction process and the Titanic-sized mall coming together, which was soon to be opened by 1970. A little late, yes, but well worth the wait, and perfectly baked in the oven. One of the most surreal things about this being my home dead mall sort of is that I have just witnessed all of these brands leave over the years, and it has been so strange, like Bath & Body Works, which was still there, as you can see in this visit, but won't be for much longer, and this Spencer Gifts right here, which is where I got my very first shot glass. So many memories in this mall, it is really going to hurt me the day that they close this place down. Black's fourth satellite store, and largest outside of their downtown department store, would open up its exposed redwood beams and brick-accented walls to shoppers on Friday, November 7th, 1969. As the second piece in the puzzle, like Sears, Black's would be a staple at the new mall, anchoring a smaller one-story junior anchor on the upper level near JCPenney, where the current-day abandoned Old Navy is. And actually, their mall entrance would have been right where this Bath & Body Works and Victoria's Secret were. The store, which was modeled to resemble an early 19th century Victorian home, blew shoppers away with its fine details and luxurious touches. The new store would offer several different departments of fine ware for shoppers to choose from. The gallery with its glasswares, and the crystal room with a selection of luxurious fur coats and other fine clothing underneath of a decadent chandelier. Victorian sconces and fine china dotted the store, with other departments making up the layout, including the formal parlor, the casual parlor, the villager, the knit nook, the forecast shop, the gentleman smoker, the sir shop, and the squire shop. Yeah, they really went all out on this store, and its mall connection was soon to open up itself, with Crossroads' grand opening soon to get underway. Look at the styrofoam plants. Like the pink showing through. Oh, these plants are on their last legs. Look at the little... What is that? Oh, it's gold tinfoil. I thought those were lights in there. Damn. One of my favorite things to do in this mall last year was just come here and watch people walk up to the Bath and Body Works just to find out that it was closed. It was the most fun activity. Basically just seeing people walk in, look around and go, oh, is there really anything left in here? And last year Bath and Body Works was open, so people thought that they could still get to it, but halfway through the summer, I guess they were just like, nope, we give up. And after that, the store closed. So it was a constant stream of just watching families walk in and up to the store and then leaving the mall. And that was pretty much it. They find out that it's closed and they're like, well, shoot, gotta go to Cedar Falls, I guess. On Wednesday, March 11th, 1970, Crossroads Center, as it was first called, would officially open its doors for business. And although the mall's shape is much the same today, upon opening, it aesthetically looked much different. Several colorful stores populated both levels of shopping, which was touted as one of a kind in Iowa at the time. Shops like Singer Sewing, Seifert's, Royce Shoes, Shields, Walker Shoes, Osco Drug, Woolworth's, Earl May, Gene Enderlin's, Kinney Shoes, The Paper Tree, Stewart's, Hanover Shoes, and Fanny Farmer Candies all opened with the mall, with several more shops and restaurants opening in the coming weeks and months. Before the pillars were rounded, they were a smooth rectangular stone, with planters at the bases and wood paneling wrapped around the entirety of the mall's second-level trims. Before the elevator or any of the skylights, the mall's courts were bare and rather dark, if not illuminated by the stores or the scatter of pot lights above. Before the modern-day escalators, the original two escalators ascended and descended into either the Sears Court or the JCPenney Court from the central bridge. And connecting the upper level to the lower level near each anchor entrance lie wood trim-wrapped spiral staircases. In this clip you can actually see them all during the holiday season, with giant decorations hung from the ceiling and some unique globe lights dangling on the left. Don't know much about those, as these are the only time they appear. Maybe just Christmas decor? Let me know down below. Crossroads' giant ovular parking lot would also open with several amenities, such as 2 banks and a massive furniture store called McGregor's. Sears Auto and JCPenney Auto Center also worked in the ring, competing to provide the best service in town. A year later, on July 16, 1971, and the Crossroads 1 and 2 theaters would also officially open in the parking lot as an outparcel. The first films being shown were Wild Rovers and The Summer of '42. Stores to open in the coming months after the mall's opening included Paul's, Musicland, New Mode, President Jewelers, and several other shops, along with 2 small kiosks on a lower level in either court known as the Wishing Wells, which offered popcorn, candy, hot dogs, and hot coffee to locals. You can actually very briefly see the Wishing Well in the JCPenney court in this clip from the Waterloo song. A much beloved classic, Bishop's Buffet, would officially open its doors for business on Saturday, March 21st, 1970, opening its beautiful, decadent restaurant and 5-star buffet to locals at 11 a.m., and remaining a staple at Crossroads for several decades, with many locals fondly remembering Bishop's fantastic food and long lines to get into the restaurant, which would stretch down the Osco corridor, which you saw when we first walked in. Upon completion, Crossroads Center was an obvious smash hit. Its gargantuan size and massive big box anchor and junior anchor stores were its bread and butter, providing a steady source of foot traffic, whom at that point completely abandoned downtown shopping. In a time of suburbanization, the modern conveniences of suburban life had finally caught up to Waterloo with the new mall, and soon housing subdivisions and other retail developments sprouted up all over the place north of the mall and along Highway 412. Almost daily, cars encircled the sea of parking, as the mall was busied about by thousands and thousands of shoppers at a time. The 60s were over, and the 70s were in full swing. That meant newer styles and fashions, mall concerts, school events, car shows, TV show filmings, and even fashion and beauty shows. In its time, Crossroads was a happening place, a concrete beacon of shopping sitting on the edge of the city's limits. Surrounding the mall, the cornfields and the small arterial roads would soon be built up into what was to one day become Waterloo's primary retail hub. Before we go on, I just gotta gush about this Sears facade real quick, because holy cow, how does this fantastic original brick entrance last so long? The 70s are strong with this one, and despite Gordman's taking up half of the upper level, the fact that the store was this big at one time just infinitely blows my mind. But I just had to throw in my 2 cents. I just love that facade so much. Every time I come to this mall, I take a picture or a video of it. I probably have hundreds of photos of it in my camera roll at this point, and I'm not even ashamed. It's just that amazing. The 70s were the golden years for original Crossroads Center. Like stated previously, it filled up day to day with shoppers in a way that any popular mall at the time would. However, in time that new mall feel wore off, and in the midst of the thousands of malls opening across America in the 1970s, Crossroads became just another big shopping center. It even lost its title as the only two-story super-regional mall in Iowa, with the opening of Valley West Mall in 1976.
The cleaning car's been there for like 4 years.
In the late 70s, the theaters would be turned into a quad, and in 1979, Black's would be acquired by Donaldson's, whom would rebrand the Crossroads store accordingly. And now for a bit of a disturbing story in its timeline. On the evening of September 1st, 1979, Cynthia Reynolds, who managed the Reunion clothing store, was locking up shop late with over $1,000 of cash on her. Due to the hour, all of the entrances to the mall were already locked, so she had to call over the mall's head of security, Guy Eugene Rich. Apparently his key was bent, so they had to go to a different entrance. Once on the lower level, he stopped to look into the men's restroom, where suddenly he produced a knife and told Reynolds if she were to make a sound or try to escape, that he would kill her. He then bound her up and assaulted her in the restroom. Afterwards, after stealing the cash she had, he tied her to one of the mall's spiral staircases by her own bra and left to get a garbage can. When he returned, he wheeled out a 3-wheel push can and shoved her inside. Cynthia, barely able to breathe at this point, suffocating under garbage, was then wheeled to a wooden shed in the mall's maintenance room, where Guy disappeared for over 10 minutes. When he returned, he wheeled Reynolds back to one of the mall's main escalators and left again. She managed to tip the can over and broke free of her restraints, running to a nearby restaurant called Sutter's Mill. Despite her efforts, her pleas went unnoticed by patrons inside. Guy then captured her, struck her, and rebound her hands and feet, placing a chain around her neck. He then put her back in the garbage can and wheeled it out of the mall's lower level entrance to a nearby outbuilding. Reynolds was once again able to work free of her bindings, struggled with Guy, tipped the trash can over, and ran to a nearby parked car, the occupant of which finally helped her contact the police. Guy Eugene Rich, such a creepy sounding name, was later apprehended in Las Vegas, of all places, with just $47 on his person. His disgusting actions that night would earn him life in prison for his crimes, and Reynolds' 1980 lawsuit was eventually settled with mall management for $300,000, 3 years later in 1983. In local papers, she goes anonymous, but I am literally just reading exactly what the case says here. State v. Rich, 1981. I'll leave a link in the description if anyone is interested on reading the whole thing. In 1980, Gerald Schoenfelder, owner of Crossroads Centers, would sell the mall to the Equitable Life Assurance Society, a firm that was also under the same belt as GGP, making Crossroads, in a way, a GGP mall for a time. However, Equitable would do little with the mall for several years, retaining original management. The theater would be renovated yet again in the early 80s, this time with 3 more screens added on for a total of 7. In the early 80s, Waterloo and America were a quickly changing place, and one could argue if it was really all for the better. In the early 80s especially, because hundreds of residents and several long-standing businesses and historical buildings would be bulldozed right downtown for the new stretch of freeway, which now cut Waterloo in half. New 218, aka I-380, aka the Leo P. Roof Expressway, was now a reality, and like so many other American cities which dabbled too far into urban reconstruction and put the convenience of car travel over all else, Waterloo too would suffer from blight. The first segments of the new freeway opened in August of 1984, and later segments would be completed in 1989 and 91. At Crossroads, however, the mall was certainly feeling the mid-80s recession, with several slower sales years reported for the now aging mall. Yes, despite its initial hype and significance, it was now the 80s. Malls were something else. Good old Crossroads was just very quickly out of the times, and stores all over were closing and disappearing off the directory. New nearby big box like Kmart and several new strip malls were sucking away from the mall's once prominent grasp, and owners at Equitable saw the writing on the wall: renovate the mall or see it die. And with a fresh management change in 1985, rumors quickly began to spread that big changes were coming to the mall, and that something would thankfully be done. Now, before we yap on too much further on the history and come to a close with our main visit, I just want to let y'all enjoy the pure beauty of Crossroads and try to recreate that indescribable feeling of being lost in the twinkling lights. It's a feeling that I'll never forget, the enchanting magic of this place and its haunting atriums, forever empty yet forever fascinating. There's one security guard here that I always have to make sure that I'm watching my back for, because this dude will scream at you from across the mall. He's done it to me multiple times just for taking a picture. You guys may have heard him in past live streams or seen him at the beginning of this video, and don't worry, we'll get to that encounter in time. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that I've made this guy's hit list, and I've probably been banned from this mall in some way. I mean, I actually was, technically, after those 2 random guys found me exploring the inside of the abandoned Sears a few years back, if you remember that from my last Crossroads video. But I don't know, I just keep finding myself coming back here over the years, and I found that if you go in the afternoon between 12 and 2 p.m., there's never anyone, security or management, or even people. So that's usually when I went, because, you know, I'm not trying to have some crazy power-tripping security guard chase me out under the threat of police of all things, just because I'm taking pictures. That's ridiculous. On October 28, 1987, JCPenney would reopen their doors after a $2 million store makeover, which rid of the store's older departments like electronics, furniture, cameras, and even Penny's own restaurant. The auto center would be closed, but the most notable change, however, was the squeezing of the store down to just the first floor. Penny's, finding the space too big to fill, would gut their escalators, leaving the upper level up for grabs. In November of 1987, Donaldson's would officially become Carson's, and in late December of 1987, the struggling Woolworths would close their massive Crossroads store, which took up a major portion of the lower level near JCPenney. This was no problem, however, as Woolworth's manager Kim Talbot said that the store was never a moneymaker, and instead mall manager Bonnie Smith was in the works of turning the space into 4 separate retailers, which was all in coordination with a mall renovation that would surely bring Crossroads into the next era. Before we get to the facelift that completely changed Crossroads Mall and brought it into a newer, more colorful world, let's take one last ride down the elevator, as this was the last visit where I was able to fully ride it and get video. All subsequent trips to the mall, and there was just a measly page of paper covering the button, declaring that it was out of order. Namdar, the current owners, have obviously left this place in the dust. Under new management from General Management, aka General Growth Properties, the first rumors of a mall-wide renovation/expansion began to spread in 1986. It wasn't until February of 1987, however, that the first concrete news came out, calling for a multi-million-dollar renovation which would add dozens of currently missing amenities, along with several new stores. Crossroads would remain open through the renovations, which began in April of 1988, and were slated to be completed by the following spring. With construction work only done at night, as to not disturb shopping hours, the project was completed in record time, and the mall was soon ready with its new fresh looks and its very shiny food courts. Now before we get to the mall's first major renovation, let's first take a quick drive around the outside, seeing a few of the pretty sights and gawking at the beautiful structure, which is this interesting mix of all of the eras, 70s, 90s, and 2000s. We'll come back to seeing the outside of it like this a few more times coming up through the seasons, as now the main mall tour is done, and we head back for my subsequent 2024 visits, which I'll timestamp as I'm inside. But in these visits, I didn't record near as much each time, but instead rather capture the mall as it closed off its final brands. Demolition news came, items all over the court started disappearing, and I started exploring more of the increasingly vacant structure. First beginning with this old abandoned space-age bank, then moving into the main mall and seeing one of the biggest losses, the closure of Bath & Body Works. In March of 1989, Crossroads Center would officially reopen with its brand new looks, as well as brandishing 2 massive fabric-topped food court tents in either court. Built to resemble circus tents, they surely added that pop of color the mall was missing, and filled up the space. Seating for over 400 people surrounded the tents upon a series of tiered platforms, which featured lampposts, stages, and planters. Lined in neons and beautiful GGP-style gold mirror trims, the 7 food vendors to open up in the new food tents included Happy Walk, Hot Dog on a Stick, Pizza and Pasta, Made Right, Taco John's, R&R Burgers, and Subside. If the new food options weren't enough, new restrooms, skylights, escalators, a new paint scheme, and 4 new stores would open near JCPenney, in the space that was formerly Woolworth. Lerner Shops, County Seat, Disc Jockey, and The Limited would all join the roster. It was also with the renovation that the old Donaldsons would officially become Carsons, with the new signage finally put up. Carsons, however, would only last a few months, as Bergner's would acquire them in 1989 and decided to close the Crossroads store on September 30th, 1989. Months later in October, Minnesota-based Herberger's would officially open above JCPenney as the mall's 3rd official anchor. With new looks, new stores, and a fresh image, Crossroads Center would excel into 1989, garnering several new stores such as Strawberry Starship, Creative Design Jewelers, CPI Photo Finish, The Brass Buckle, and Things Remembered. More stores to open in 1990 and 91 included Maurice's, Deb, Vanity, Dueling Optical, Afterthoughts, and Jewel Time Inc. The mall reported an increase of 5.4 million shoppers in 1987 pre-renovation to over 5.8 million in 1991. New big box centers nearby like Venture Market and Walmart also surely played a part. Another contributing factor to the mall's success was the expansion yet again of the theaters, which under new ownership by Excellence Theaters would reopen as a 10-screen on August 17, 1990. On this August evening, after I found out that the Bath & Body Works store was officially closed, I tried to make my way down to the lower level so I could look inside the Sam Goody and see if I could see anything inside for a little bit. What I didn't know is that the lower level was apparently closed off, and this was yet another instance where you can hear the security guard yelling at me, the one I was talking about earlier. Listen up closely at the very end, you'll hear him say, "Sir," and then he's like, "You gotta get out of here," and then he asks me if I'm recording and freaks out. Fun stuff. Another one of my favorite pastimes, anytime that I was down at this mall, was visiting the dusty Sears windows, which were always chalked up with drawings and words and commemorations for Sears. Lots of commemorations for Sears. Wow. We just absolutely love that here. Shout out to the people that have written out on those windows. You know who you are. You're amazing. We love you. In the early 90s, Crossroads Center was riding what felt like an eternal high, as the mall was at its peak, with most of its spaces filled with colorful national name brands, and its busy food courts bustled about by droves of curious and hungry locals daily. The old Carson space would eventually be renovated into an Old Navy, and in 1991, Sears would sublease half of their upper level to become a new Farmore pharmacy. Sears, taking the idea from JCPenney's playbook, realized that their store, in a newer, modern age, was just way too big and impractical. Farmore would become a half-price store in 1993, which would later become Gordman's in 2000. In the mid-90s, however, Crossroads was at a crossroads, as on August 1st, 1995, Equitable would announce that the mall was under new management. GGP had been dropped for the new Atlanta-based Compass Retail, who along with local management agreed that while the late 80s renovations were surely nice, in their time, for a few years, people quickly saw them as tacky and outdated. Even local management complained that they missed the original open feel of the courts. And so, in coordination with Compass Retail and Little Rock, Arkansas-based Dillard's, a second major facelift to the structure was announced as early as summer of '96, with Compass willing to throw in $10 million for the new mall designs, and Dillard's already signed on to construct a new $20 million anchor store on the mall's south side. Alright, here we are at what has to be my favorite visit to this mall ever. It was a crisp autumn morning in November, the trees were changing colors, and the weeds in the parking lots were all dead, so the mall didn't look as apocalyptic as it usually does. And I really didn't expect the mall itself to be open because it was like 9:50 in the morning, and the mall isn't listed as being open until 11 a.m. But the lower level door was open, so I just went in and carefully and quietly traversed my way about the half-dark structure. And I mean that literally. You'll see how half of the lights and all of the escalators were turned off, but not the twinkling lights. No, never those. I actually think those stay on 24/7. But it was just such a surreal walk through the structure. And to top it off, I saw those giant doors that open at the end of the management hallway and decided what better time to see what was on the other side, leading to some very creepy IRL backrooms exploration. Stick around for that. Surrounded by nothing but the dull silence of the empty mall, broken up by the occasional kids' rides blasting loud 3-second tunes, which would echo down through the halls, I truly got the feeling like I was seeing some sort of vision of Crossroads post-abandonment. Except when that day comes, and it will one day, those lights won't still be twinkling. On February 3rd, 1997, work would begin on Crossroads' next major makeover and addition. $6.5 million would be spent to see the removal of the food tents and dining areas and addition of a new $20 million, 155,000 square foot Dillard's store, which would become the mall's new fourth official anchor. Extensive work would be done to give the mall its current looks, not only on the interior but the exterior, with new entrances, paint scheming, signage, and the mall's new official name, Crossroads Mall, branded all over the lot. And on Wednesday, August 13th, 1997, Dillard's, along with the newly remodeled mall, would officially debut to the public. At 9:30 a.m., Mayor John Roof, along with Dillard's and Crossroads officials, would officially greet shoppers with a continental breakfast and a jazz concert, welcoming hundreds of shoppers to the mall's newest department store and the largest construction project in Waterloo since the mall itself. With Crossroads' new looks of the towering palm pillars and the giant tile compasses in each of the courts, and several new stores and kiosks, the mall was once again reinvigorated with new life, and her burgers would officially become Yonkers. I've made quite a few memories at this mall over the past 5 years, whether it be scaling the old JCPenney facade with a friend, exploring the back areas, buying stuff from closing stores, watching a friend get locked into a closing store, and even hunting with another friend on the roof of the old Sears finding Pokemon cards during a snowstorm. I just have a lot of sentiment towards this mall, but I want to hear about your sentiment. Comment down below what some of your favorite moments or memories were in this mall or its stores. Let me know down below. Now, before we get to the wild new age of the 2000s, let's explore the creepy service hallways behind the Old Learner and Sam Goody, which contain a massive storeroom for several old shops that don't exist anymore, and a huge conveyor belt, which was probably once used when all of the space was still Woolworth. Why does Sam Goody have 2 back entries? Well, that's a good question, and the reason is because the space was originally 2 spaces, 2 separate doors for 2 separate stores, casual corner in the corner, and disc jockey right next to them. However, with the mall's renovations in 1997, the old Musicland and disc jockey would close, and the renovations would merge the closing casual corner and disc jockey spaces into one unified Sam Goody store, hence the 2 doors. I guess they just kept both of them after the wall was torn down. The Musicland space over by Shields would become a Harley-Davidson store for some time, before closing in the early 2010s. have absolutely no clue how this security guard right here didn't catch me, literally coming out of the hallway right in front of him. And it was the mean one, so I would have been screwed, but thankfully he was looking down at his phone, glued to it, and didn't see me slink into the restrooms seconds before he walked by me. I even ran in and stood on the toilet seat when he walked by. It was probably the most exhilarating 37 seconds of my life, trying not to get caught, but for bro, he was literally just sending a text. Now for this next instance, I can't say that I got away so easily. I was literally just driving around the mall, innocently taking a few photos and videos of the outside, when suddenly he flies up to me in his black car, screams at me that he's gonna call the police on me if I don't leave because I'm literally taking pictures and videos. That is it. Ego bruised, he then chases me out of the parking lot, almost hitting me multiple times just because I'm taking a video.
Okay.
I'll call the police. I'm not even playing with you. This is private property.
You're gonna call the police?
Yes. And they will tell you. If he says you have to leave, you have to leave.
Oh, alright.
You've done it before,
Alright.
so I'm telling you to leave.
Okay. Have a nice night, sir.
And I was perfectly comfortable with leaving. I was literally just gonna film out my window and see them all as I left the parking lot, but this guy insisted on driving up beside me and nearly hitting me, screaming at me multiple times. Let's take a look.
Oh my gosh, look. Look at him coming up beside me. Gonna cause an accident. Look at he's trying to say something. I'm not listening to that guy. What a freaking lunatic. Come on, this is your security. Good lord. This is gonna be a great video. What the song? Look at this guy. Oh! Hey! Piss off!
After I had had my fun of just driving around with him and him chasing me around the ring road, I left and came back 15 minutes later when he was gone, because bro doesn't know that I literally live in this town and can come to this mall whenever I want. But enough of this, let's hit our next time skip and visits to winter, the mall's final winter, and the many problems that came with it. In the late 90s, the old 10 screen would be renovated for the final time, becoming a 12 screen operated by CEC. Crossroads held a thriving grasp on Waterloo's retail scene for several decades. However, by the 2000s and the late 2000s especially, the bloated big box and mall retail economy was tanking quickly, and old outdated brands in the mall were either closing and moving to nearby strip centers, or closing entirely. In April of 2007, Crossroads sued Bishop's Buffet, whom were over $61,000 behind on their lease payments, and employees weren't even being paid. The store would abruptly close after serving its last meals on April 17, 2007. There was hope for new management to reopen and save the store, but it would never happen, and has sat abandoned since. FYE, after a few years of operation in the old Sam Goody space, would officially close their doors on January 24, 2009. Osco Drug would become a CVS in the early 2000s, and CVS would of course close in 2011, its space also never reopening. It was also around the mid-2010s that the carousel, which had been operating for several years in the Sears Court, would be removed. For a short time, Spinoza owned the mall in the late 2000s, before tossing it over to Jones Lang LaSalle. Crossroads in the early 2010s was still doing decent numbers. However, in the time of modern-day online shopping convenience and newer, fancier, and more modern names outside the mall taking foot traffic, it would all start to struggle once again. However, this time, nothing was ever done to save it, and Crossroads would spiral into its final state.
Why Spider-Man break at the Crossroads Mall. Probably inside the JCPenney.
By January, more expected losses hit the mall, as US Cellular moved across the street to a brand new strip mall, which is just an absolutely bizarre spectacle to behold, seeing new ugly little modern strip malls pop up while Crossroads continues to sit there and die, overseeing it all like this giant empty ghost town. It's just very jarring, to say the least, because while these new strip malls are being built, you have brands like IHOP and Little Caesars and all these restaurants around the mall, and it's just a big black hole. It sucks in everything around it.
One of the things about coming to this mall every single time is that you need to notice differences in the visits. And today's difference between it being freezing cold and there being, well, there's nobody in here, but that's every time. But look at this. What is happening here? There's a leakage happening. You can see the water. You can see the water spurting. What is happening here? Oh, guys, the puddle. Oh gosh, I almost slipped. The puddle is spreading. Gosh, this is I should have just fell right there. I could have filed a lawsuit.
Look at that. Something's bursting back there.
It's seeping in to the closed off area and soaked that carpet completely. And based off how cold it is in this mall, it might freeze and turn into ice. Who the frick even knows? Okay, another notable change. The massage chairs are gone. They must have sold them. You can see where the outline was. Here, there you go. You can see where the outline was for the massage chairs. Dang. Guys, the streets are damn dire at Crossroads Mall. It is not much longer for this place.
At some point, someone must have come through here and smashed out this bishop's window, revealing a look back into another era with those amazing brick wall designs. I do wish there was a little more left of it, but what is still here is amazing, and you definitely don't see these kinds of looks nowadays in restaurants anymore, which is just so sad, because Bishop's, and this restaurant especially, was one that had a lot of color and a lot of life to it at one point. In the early 2010s, both Old Navy would close, and Scheels too would close their original and long-standing store in 2013. In 2014, Jones Lang LaSalle, who owned the mall, would default on their $45 million loan, the mall of which wasn't even worth half of that, being valued at just $19 million. It would go into the hands of its lenders, E3 Realty Advisors, who would manage it for a few years until the next owner came about. JCPenney, closing several struggling stores in Iowa, and 38 others in the country to be specific, would be the first major domino to tip the scales, as they would close their original, albeit half-sized store on January 8th, 2015. The space would later be taken up by an at-home furniture store, however, they would limit mall access, and a furniture store just didn't really have the same appeal as JCPenney. In the 1970s and throughout its life, Crossroads was built up around its massive big box anchor stores. So as these stores started to leave, so did people, and in turn, other mall stores. Children's Place, Vanity, Victoria's Secret, PacSun, Hallmark all disappeared, and short-lived mom-and-pop stores, if nothing at all, would come to take their spots. By 2017, the worst news came, as Namdar would buy the mall from E3, giving locals their generic, "we're planning to help the mall in any way we can" response. Which was, of course, all lies, as with passing time, the ties between local management and slumlord ownership would completely disappear, and Crossroads would fall even further into a state of disrepair. One of the more sad recent losses was the China Express restaurant, who were in the mall for a long time, and left behind this sad note describing the situation. I think that these notes especially are the saddest because the restaurant doesn't talk about moving or reopening. They simply just thank people who came over the years for their patronage and bid farewell to Waterloo. Which, damn, that just hurts to see. We hit a bit of a time skip there between winter, then May, then just recently in July. And these clips that you're seeing are from just a few days ago, or I guess about a week ago as you're seeing this video. And you're gonna see how Genos Pizza is literally the only thing operating in this mall. It is absolutely bizarre, and the mall plans to close any day now once Genos moves out. So they haven't done it yet, but it's going to be soon. But it is more than surreal to walk around a mall where there is literally only one tenant remaining. Even the army recruiters moved, as you can see.
The toys are gone. Because they finally got donated. I just realized another thing. The Gallopers machine is officially gone. Used to be right there.
2018 was easily one of the mall's darkest years, as in January of 2018, the last original anchor, Sears, would announce the closure of their massive anchor store, and after liquidation sales would shutter for good in April of 2018. Days later, on April 18th, Yonkers announced that with their parent Bonton Store's liquidation, that it would close all of its remaining Iowa stores, including its Crossroads location, leaving Crossroads with just at home Gordman's and Dillard's as its remaining anchors. And without its giant big boxes as draws for people, which took up massive amounts of foot space, the inline stores would seriously start to close, and the mall quickly started to take on that depleted look you see now here daily. Stores like Foot Locker, K, GNC, Subway, and even the original Tilt Arcade near Sears would all vanish, leaving Crossroads with just a scatter of inline retail, which too, over time, would evaporate. On May 11th, 2020, Gordman's would announce the closure of their store as a part of their company-wide bankruptcy. And just 8 days later, on the 19th, Dillard's announced the closure of their giant two-story anchor store, citing poor sales and a lacking customer base. Which doesn't really surprise me. I mean, I find it crazy how Dillard's was able to stick around for so long in this mall anyway. Even before 2020, Crossroads was being noticed as one of Iowa's largest dying malls, going from one of the best just 5 years ago in 2015 to one of the quickest deteriorating, with At Home as its sole anchor and a handful of slowly closing stores. Crossroads soldiered into the 2020s, a new yet final era. And here we are, my final visit and most recent footage. We're in a simple mission to record a few things on the outside. I parked my car, found a cracked door, and discovered that the mall actually was open on the 4th of July. However, that didn't really mean that there was anybody inside the structure, as there was literally nobody else inside the structure. And I once again got that surreal mall to myself feeling that I just absolutely love about this place.
Doors open. Is the mall open?
At Home, the mall's final anchor store, would officially close their store in November of 2023. And without any of its big box, the remaining mall tenants would slowly close over the course of 2024 and 2025. Some of the last names in the halls, Jazzercise, the Army Recruiters, China Express, and even the massage parlor that was never open have all cleared out. Even Spirit of Halloween, whom always used to operate its seasonal store in the former Old Navy, decided against it in 2024, leaving the mall pretty barren for the spooky season. During December of 2024, it was announced that redevelopment plans had been passed by the city, and that the mall would close that holiday. However, the mall remained open and into 2025. As of recording these voice lines in early July of 2025, Genos is the last operating tenant in the structure, and the Crossroads Mall is only on borrowed time. Perhaps that's why the security guards here are always so ornery. They just know that they're going to lose their jobs soon. There was one time where I was taking a photo and a management lady told me that I couldn't because it was spreading a bad image of the mall and that I was giving people the idea that it was already closed. Well, I don't really think that I'm the one that's doing that. I mean, just look at the place. And remember all the families that would walk into the mall just to see everything closed and then leave. That's not even me. That's you, Crossroads. You're the one with the dead mall. You are the dead mall. If anything, I'm just documenting and preserving its story online. It's unclear exactly what the future holds for Crossroads once it closes, but after Genos leaves, other than mall walking, there will literally be no reason to open the structure daily. And I'll definitely be back for the mall's last day. We'll see if that's ever announced, or if they just decide to quietly close it. Wouldn't be surprised if they did that. Whatever the outcome is though, I'll probably have a closing day video, and in the future, maybe even an abandoned exploration. But this 1 hour and 30-minute mega tour is definitely my final tour and history of the mall. You all saw how a mall was built up in a time of mall prominence, changed several times with the times, and fell on its face in less than 10 years under bad ownership. It's a mall tale as old as time, but never told better than by Crossroads. Will the redevelopment plans come through one day? And will the site one day just be a scatter of office, apartments, and parking lots? You tell me. What do you think the future holds for Crossroads? Be sure to check the comments, as I'll eventually leave a pinned comment on when it actually does close, because it'll literally be any day now. You guys are probably sick of seeing this mall at this point, but I just love this place, and anytime I'm here, I can never get enough of its lost aesthetics. Similar to my last Crossroads video, I'll send this mall off with a Godspeed. Last time it was into the new year, when the mall still had stores, but this time it's into its final few weeks, or months, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Thank you all so much though for joining me for this extremely long and special episode. I hope you enjoyed the beautiful Crossroads as much as I, and found its history just as interesting. If any of you are ever in the Waterloo area, stop by this amazing mall before it's gone. Grab a slice at Genos if they're still around, and get lost in its ambient, sparkling atmosphere. Just try not to get kicked out by security. If y'all enjoyed tonight's video, consider liking, as it helps me out tons, and maybe even subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. In the next one, be sure to join in as I begin my next Minnesota Dead Mall tour, starting us off with a mall whose name originally should have belonged in a sweet shop, but is now extremely dull and lame. Guess which mall we'll be at, and I'll shout you out in the next episode. Anyways, since I love this place so much, and I don't want to go out on a somber note, I'll end tonight's special with this absolute banger of a tune by Casino Gardens. Cheers all, have a fantastic evening, farewell Crossroads, and peace out guys, see you later.